Welcome everyone to a very special presentation, The World at 8 Billion, Infinite Possibilities. I'm Shivani Gupta. The world has reached a population of 8 billion and is going to peak at 10.4 billion in the 2080s. According to the United Nations Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency, the UNFPA, a world of 8 billion humans is a world of infinite possibilities. That said, the population will continue to grow, but the speed of growth is slowing down. For example, it took 12 years for the increase from 7 to 8 billion, but the rise from 8 to 9 will take 14.5 years till 2037. The increase in the population is due to improved health care, reduced global poverty, improvement in maternal and child health, and an increase in the longevity of us. Thus, it's quite certain that the thrust on improving the quality of life needs to continue to sustain this progress. Today, joining us in our special episode, The World of 8 Billion Infinite Possibilities, is Mr. Bjorn Andersson, Regional Director, Asia Pacific, UNFPA, who has a vast experience on this issue, especially from the Asia Pacific region. He's here to share his perspective. Thanks a lot, Mr. Andersson, for being with us.
Thank you so much.
I want to begin by asking you, what's the significance, according to you, that the global population is now at 8 billion?
Well, first of all, it reflects positive developments in the world.
Yes.
8 billion represents better healthcare in general, that children have access to education. And the reason why this is important is because then that's when people live longer, basically, and have better health and better life and well-being.
The quality of life is also better and the longevity is also better.
Absolutely. But of course, it also reflects something in terms of population aging in many countries.
Yes.
And that is going very, very fast, especially in Asia and the Pacific.
Okay. So can I just ask you, there are a lot of people who are alarmed by the fact that the population is reaching these milestones. How would you respond to those concerns?
8 billion represents really 8 billion opportunities and possibilities. We need to see people as drivers of technological development, of improved healthcare, improved social services, and improved life in general. But and if you look at the number itself, it might not tell you the full story. And we can see now that also the demographic changes in societies, in regions, is becoming much more diverse. I've spent now a couple of days in India. I had very, very useful meetings with government representatives and local government representatives. But what I take with me from my experience here is the diversity of the demographic structure in India.
Yes. So that means that the population is not increasing in the same rate or in the same manner for the entire country. Right. There are differences, right?
You see, this is the thing. If you look at what we call the total fertility rate, the number of children per woman, it might be around 2.1 in India. But if you then go down to look at the state level,
by state, you have
states with just one child per woman.
And some higher than 2.3.
Like Bihar, three children per woman.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we will discuss in a little bit of detail. Exactly where does India lie as far as this population, these population milestones are concerned. But I first want to also begin by asking you, for the benefit of our viewers, this thing about demographic dividend. We hear a lot about it, especially in context of the conversation with India. Explain to our viewers what that is.
So very briefly, because the demographic dividend includes a number of different policy measures and activities, I would say. But if you have a very youthful population, like in India, and in certain states more than others, and if the governments ensure that you invest in children's education, invest in their health care, and also invest in, when young people come up to the working age, that you invest in decent employment, all of that together gives a country the possibility to provide support to a growing elderly population. Because that's what we have with the demographic dividend. And usually the demographic dividend the window for demographic dividend closes about 10-15 years. So you really need to take the advantage of that. So it's really how governments, what kind of policies they develop, in especially in social services.
I'll come to the policies that, for example, for a country like India will be very crucial as we enter that phase. But I do want to get your thoughts on the fact that it is believed that virtually all advanced economies have left the phase of demographic dividend. A lot of other countries, some of the poorest economies, haven't entered it yet. But there are a few countries which are very well positioned to realize this demographic dividend. You would say India is one of those countries?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think what is interesting with India is the diversity of the demographic structure. So you have states in the south where you basically need more people to come in and provide services, for example. The labor market, employment market is higher. And then you have states in the northern part of India where you have a growing younger population. So that kind of internal domestic migrations between states gives that opportunity to benefit from the demographic dividend.
And the reason we talk about India, of course, is because India is one of the youngest countries in the world, not just one of the most populous, soon to overtake China as the most populous officially, but it is also one of the youngest. The median age in India is around 29. That's a very large workforce. So what are the policy measures you think India needs to take to fully reap the benefits of this very short window of demographic dividend?
Put women and girls in the center. A short answer, put women and girls in the center. Their empowerment, their needs and their rights, very important aspects of achieving the demographic dividend. But of course, with that comes also the importance to work with men and make sure that we prevent toxic, what we call in the within UNFPA, toxic masculinities. And that is, it takes time. We have to admit that. It takes time to change norms and values and behavior. But I have no doubt that India can do that. And if you look at other countries around the globe, it happens. But I can say this, there's no country so far which has achieved full gender equality.
And when we talk of gender equality, what are those markers that you look at?
So, many. If you look at women's participation, for example.
In the workforce?
In the workforce, in the political sphere, sharing responsibilities with their husbands, the family duties, if you like, and making sure that their children have, that both the father and the mother are there for the children. Very, very important aspects. And girls' education. Yeah. Essential for many reasons. And that what our experience tells us is that if girls can stay in education, in the school, they also delay their marriage and they delay the first time they're having a baby.
The first child, yes.
Which has an implication on the demographic dividend, but more importantly on women's career opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Also in India, of course, we've come a long way when it comes to sex ratios, for example. In different states it differs. We've come a long way as far as child mortality, infant mortality, mother mortality is concerned. But from your experience, what do you feel particularly about India and what needs our attention?
Okay. I think there is much to learn from India. And what is interesting is that different states have had advanced on gender equality, for example, in different ways, or education system or health systems. But what I think is important is that we all together, and India is no exception, it's what I see throughout the whole region, is that we really identify those norms and values which are a barrier for women to be able to participate fully in societies. So harmful norms and practices. And to give you a couple of examples, you have what we call gender-biased sex selection. So basically the preference for sons is increasing, so that given that many women and men or couples are aborting girl childs, and also then later on, if you have a boy and a child, that you might favor the boy for
versus
him,
the daughter.
Yeah, exactly, over the daughter, and that's a it's a norm that we can see in a couple of in countries in the region. Very important too, because it reflects not just. I mean, it's violating the girls' rights.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it also reflects something in a society on how you value boys over
versus
girls.
girls. It is said that realizing the demographic dividend, which India is so well positioned to reap, is not automatic. You have to do things for that to really happen for you. What are those key things? Of course, ensuring gender equality is one. And other than that, what are the things you think India really needs to do from the policy framework?
So investments in the social sector, education, making sure that girls and boys can, complete their education and function in a society with India which is rapidly under changes in terms of economic growth, in terms of development, but also access to healthcare, and especially young women, adolescents, girls, to have access to what we talk about, sexual health and reproductive health. You referred to it in the beginning. And with that comes access to information and services around relationships, around unions, but also around family planning services, or access to contraceptives. And the third part, which is so important, is decent employment, decent job opportunities for women in particular.
So that they make better decisions in life as well. We have to slip into a very short break. Stay with us. We'll continue this conversation about demographic dividend, especially tied to the issue of gender equality. Stay with us. Welcome back to our special presentation, World of 8 Billion, Infinite Possibilities. I'm in conversation with the Asia Pacific Regional Director, Bjorn Andersson of the UNFPA. Let's talk about India's numbers now. We talked about how the world has reached the mark of 8 billion and how, some may be nervous about that. India is going to overtake China as the most populous country very soon at a figure of over 1.4 billion people. What does that mean for India, you think?
It's up to India to make that interpretation. But what I do know is that, of course, working in an international organization, we are all following what India is doing in order to provide services, to provide how to use the digitalization in the country, so that all people, especially women and girls, can benefit from the digitalization and access information about sexuality, about access to contraceptives, what we talk about within the UNFPA, bodily autonomy. Because that is so important for a woman and a girl to be able to decide over her own body.
Could you expand on that a little bit, bodily autonomy?
Sure.
Because it's a concept, of course, we've begun to talk about around the world and in India as well. How would you explain that to someone who's never heard of that before?
The simplest way and the most straightforward is that a woman should decide over her own body, full stop. But we know that in many societies that you have practices, traditions, which are actually harmful to a woman or to a girl. And in parts of the world, we have what we are trying to prevent, female genital mutilation, for example. But also psychosocial, gender-based violence in psychosocial area or in mental health. It could also be gender-based violence in terms of sexual abuse. So all these things together, a woman should be able to, to be have her own right to her body, to decide
what happens,
and nobody, and this is important, there is no excuse whatsoever that any man or anybody can exercise gender-based violence to a woman.
I think sometimes it's important to tell women themselves that they need not follow certain social markers, that they are the ones who should decide what happens as far as their body is concerned.
No, you're absolutely right. And it is, we need to be able to empower women through, like I said before, through girls' education, so that they know that this is not okay to having a husband or a spouse or any family member abusing you in different ways. And the figures are staggering in the region. It varies between countries, But it's not just acceptable.
You mean the Asia-Pacific region?
Yes, the Asia-Pacific region.
So could you give us a sense of...
So you have countries in the region where a woman during her lifetime have been exposed to gender-based violence, up to 50% of them. In India, the figure is around 30%, a third. And this is more common than we think in all countries. And we really need to make sure, especially during times when like COVID, for example, when COVID-19, we saw that the increase of gender-based violence was there because people were at home and there was nobody to turn to. And of course, in order to prevent this and to provide psychosocial support to women who have survived gender-based violence, we also need to work with institutions, with the police, with the legal system, that we can really prosecute those who are violating. Yes, exactly.
Would you say the entire concept of family planning as well, that's also a burden that falls inordinately on women in India, in societies like the Indian societies?
Yeah. You know, during all my times at UNFPA, I've really been considering why is that the case? And partly, I think all the statistics and data is very focused on how many children a woman has over her lifetime.
Yeah.
You never talk about the number of children
a man has.
All right? Most family planning services, contraceptives, are focused on the women. So I think we need to break this. We need
to relook at this in a different way.
Right. And we need to work with, at the community level, very clearly for behavioral change. And I think if there is something, if we're looking into the future, that we need to take all our policies, that we know, our analysis at the national level, at the macro level, and bring that down to the community level, and make sure that we internalize gender equality for each and everybody.
So that the responsibility is equally shared.
Yes.
It's not just about how many children a woman is having.
Right.
Obviously, those children are being had with men. So
exactly.
The responsibility is with men too.
Precisely. And also that we explain what gender equality is for a woman and for a man who might be living in a rural areas and not have access to information on a daily basis.
I just want to move once again on the larger issue as far as the growing population in India is concerned. Climate is something that all of us are very worried about. Do you believe that India's increasing population could exacerbate those climate concerns?
You know, if you look at climate change and relation to population and demographic structures, I think the answer to that is very much around how we consume our resources and how the production pattern we have. And we need to be mindful of that. And that's why we have to have hope for the world, the global community, to agree on steps in order to make sure that our production and consumption patterns are in line with sustainable development. I think, if you go back in history, people, like Malthus, for example, did not expect people to be so innovative. So they started to talk about a population bomb, a population explosion in the 18th, 19th centuries. But what they didn't realize is that each and every one of us, we contribute to development, we contribute to sustainable development. And I think that is something that the International Conference on Population and Development in 1994 really adopted. And that's what we are continuing to implement these days.
Well, we hope that message continues to reach far and wide. But as I wrap up this conversation, Anderson, I do want to understand from you, as we are a family of 8 billion people now, 8 billion humans now around the world, what is the message to the youth that you want to give? Because it is the youth that will be in charge of the planet and, what we leave for our future generations.
Two things. We need to involve young people much more than we do today. Because at the end of the day, they know what their problems are. As somebody in my 60s, I cannot definitely exactly articulate that. But the other one is take advantage of education, take advantage of the digitalization, and really see how you can contribute to sustainable development. And the power is among young people.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I want to end this conversation. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Bjorn Anderson, Regional Director, Asia Pacific of the UNFPA. And we leave you with that message that the power is certainly with the youth and the message of gender equality. Thanks a lot for watching.